By not asking for the business and offering the product, you're actually doing the client a disservice. People want to be invited. They want to be asked. They want to be guided to the decision. When you have a systematic way to ask the questions and guide the customer, you will feel confident and they will feel confident because they know exactly where you're taking them. I just had to embrace who I was. And that's when I had the success. Even just the simplest of things can drive you and can make a difference and give you that confidence. You're going to have success.
Welcome to the Differentiation Podcast. My name is Michèle Sorgaroli. I'm your host, and today we are being joined by Stefani Havel. Now, Stefani is also known as the Client Conversion Queen. She has built her career on the fundamental belief that sales are about people first, and has spent more than 25 years leading top-performing sales teams across 4 countries with high energy, practical strategies that generate real results. As the creator of the Convert framework and an expert facilitator, Stefani helps business owners and professionals sell with connection, confidence, and clarity without awkward scripts. That's my favorite part. Yeah. Stefani, it's a delight to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Michèle. Thanks so much for having me today.
I love this awkward scripts bit. But before we go there, because I am going to come back to that, I'm curious about, tell us about the Client Conversion Queen. Tell us about where that came from and what it means to you.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, after spending 25 years in corporate and, listening into a lot of people on sales conversations, it's, that awkward. Oftentimes people feel awkward in asking for the business. How do I close the sale or convert from the conversation into a contract? And so it's really just, for me, Michèle, just sales is a conversation. And so that's really what my whole goal is with my training and my teaching is, there's a few little scripts and so forth, but just really learning to be able to have sales as a conversation and then be able to convert those conversations into contracts, right? Let's face it, we all, or even not necessarily contract, we're all in sales every day, right? Whether we're trying to sell somebody on where we want to go to dinner or what we want to do. So, so really just being able to really convert those conversations is really what my goal is. And when I heard conversations over the years in my corporate job, that's what I found the hardest part is where people had they were so great at building the rapport and everything, but then when it came time to actually convert it, sign the contract, close the deal, that's where things felt awkward and out of place. So
it's true, right?
Yeah, and I dubbed myself the Client Conversion Queen.
That's a self-proclaimed
title, but
perfect. Yeah, you're converting. Now, this is, you're really touching on something so important because you're right. Building rapport is, especially for people in services business who are giving advice and whatnot, that's the part that they love. People love building rapport, serving their clients, doing good work, really developing that strong relationship. But before all of that happens, there's this conversation that has to happen around selling, right? And there's that moment where it goes, everything's great, and then the whole thing just becomes very stiff and rigid. We've seen this as well so many times and turns awkward. I'm wondering what happens in the mindset, in your experience, what happens in the mindset of the person who is flowing beautifully and then suddenly goes stiff and everything gets awkward? What causes that transition?
I think it's really just, people, I hear it so often, Michèle, they say, I don't want to feel pushy or I don't want to feel salesy because it is a relationship to them. And so they feel that, maybe, I think a lot of times people think that they're trying to protect the relationship. But really what I want them to believe is, if they really truly believe in their product or their service, which they do, that's why they started their business or they work at that company, and realize that, by not asking for the business and offering the product, you're actually doing the client a disservice. You are not protecting that relationship by not asking for the business and, keeping that rapport level. People think, well, I guess, if they wanted it, they would just ask. People want to be invited. They want to be asked. They want to be guided to the decision. And so they feel that it's awkward or uncomfortable because they feel like they're offering something that the client might not want. And so realizing that if they come from a place of value, right, that what you're offering when you're asking for the business, getting them to sign the contract, you're giving them something of value. You are doing
Yeah.
a service to them. A lot of times, and we can talk more about it, I use an analogy of a GPS, right? Is when we have a GPS, we're confident in that we're going to get to our destination because it's telling us exactly which way to go. And
Hmm.
so we can sit back and we know what's coming. We know we're going to have to turn left and turn right to get to our destination. That's really what the sales process should be like, is if you're guiding your customer the right way, it's not going to feel awkward. They want to get to that destination. They're looking for what you have to offer. So they appreciate you asking them or presenting it to them.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
I love that. You touched on something earlier, this idea of protecting the relationship. I think you're so right. We see that so often. I see the same thing in my work, different theme around differentiation, but it's also about protecting the relationship. And the interesting thing is, by what you said, people want to be asked and they want to be invited in, they want to be guided in the decision. I think we all want that. The problem is that when we as a service provider, I think when we see with our clients, when they're wanting to provide the service and make the offer, what happens when there's that resistance is that they feel they're creating a sense of doubt in the relationship, or a moment where it's like, is this a good idea? Because they're protecting it. And yet, when they confidently say, hey, this sounds like something that's going to really work for you, for me, for us, we're going to get there. How does that sound to you? Just a simple invitation checking in. It changes the energy around the confidence that even the provider or the service provider or salesperson, if you will, has confidence in the outcome. How is
right.
what's yeah, how does I'd love you to weigh in on that and give us further thoughts.
Just, like around the confidence, I think that's where and what I teach is giving people a structure or a process. And if we've
Mm.
ever done anything, we know that a structure and a process is super effective. If you're baking, you've got to follow the process when you're baking a cake. You can't put the frosting on first. You got to build the cake first, or having a process. And I think that's where a lot of confidence can come from, is when you have a process. And as I mentioned earlier, just being able to guide the customer through that, you're
Yeah.
that's where your confidence is going to come through, because you have a process. You can show them step by step of where they're going to go. You're asking the right questions. You're overcoming any of those objections that they might have just by asking better questions. And so I think if this answers your question, right, is where that confidence is just being
Mm.
not afraid to ask the questions, ask deeper questions. I was on a call with another team yesterday, and they said, you want to find out, why does somebody want to do it? They're a bunch of fitness professionals, and saying what their goals are. And they're like, well, sometimes people say, I don't know what their goals are. Well, that's true. They don't. So then
Yeah.
we don't just move to like, oh, okay, well then let's just sign you up here and, find out, if they say, well, I
Yeah.
guess the goal is, if I had to pick one, it'd be to lose weight. Why do you want to lose weight? Why is that important to you?
Yeah.
Now, in the fitness professional's mind, they're thinking, well, duh, most people, why wouldn't they want to lose weight? Because it means it's healthiness. But you don't know what losing weight to that
Right.
person means. Is it time with their kids? Is it getting
Mm.
over that diagnosis? Is it clothes fitting better? And so when you could find out that person's why and really dig deep, that's where your internal confidence is going to come through now, and you're going to feel so much better. Guy, okay, now I get it. Mary, you said that you want to have more energy when you're playing with your kids. I understand that, how important that would be.
Love
So
that. I love
let's talk
that.
more about that, about getting your confidence back, Mary. And since she's sharing, and now all it is about a conversation about how your health and wellness program can give Mary more energy to be with her kids. And so, do you want to come
Mm.
along and join our group, Mary? Yes, yes. Thank you. For helping clarify exactly
Yeah.
what I was thinking and helping me say it out loud. So,
I love that.
long answer, I guess, to your short question, but
No,
I think
it's
that's where the
beautiful.
confidence can come in.
Totally. One of the things that you really pulled on and kind of skirted over it, but I just want to pull us back to that, was around the assumptions that we have as the people who know what we do, right? It's easy for us. Of course they want to lose weight. Why else would they be here? Or of course they want to get fit in your example. So
Mhm.
I think that's very common that we have these assumptions that of course we know their why. We don't have to ask that. And yet, to your point, interestingly, I'm sure you've had this experience with your clients. I certainly see it with mine. the place where those assumptions reside is not necessarily confident, because it's like, oh, the assumptions are taken in a way that is by default rather than by design. They're not thinking, of course I know why. They just kind of going ahead, and in the back of their mind they know why, but haven't. So there's a lack of confidence around that just kind of hovers. And the minute you ask, right, this is what you're saying, the minute you ask the why and you understand, of course, your assumption is either going to be confirmed and validated, or it's going to be clarified and go, oh, hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
Right?
And
Which will
people
give you,
sometimes feel like they're being invasive by asking, even just
yeah.
in my situation, why do you want to get better at sales? To make more money. What would that mean to you if you were making more money? Well, you know what? I could take my family on that vacation. My kid really needs new soccer shoes. Okay,
Mm,
now you're getting to that emotion. Now you're getting to
right.
the emotional piece of why
Yeah.
this decision really matters. And whatever you sell, whatever your product is, even if it's a part for a machine, what would it mean if that machine now was working at a higher, faster pace and providing more output, more results for the company, more revenue? What would more revenue do for you? Yeah, then that's where the fun comes
I
in.
can
And
hear
I
you.
think,
Oh, your energy
yeah,
is so good.
and the confidence comes in, right? Because
Right.
now we can have that just conversation
Yeah.
and we're not feeling pushy or awkward about asking them to buy our product or service, because now we understand, we get it. I get why
Yeah.
why you've thought about fitness, why you want to be better at sales. And now we can play on that talk to that emotion and help them get there.
Yeah, you really touched on something. I just want to capture it because I think it's just beautiful. You said, there's an emotion around understanding the why, and what was coming up for me is what I've seen when things get awkward, it's because there's a lack of awareness or connection to that why. So it
Yes.
feels like you're advancing, you're moving a little ahead of
Hmm.
when you don't understand clearly, but it sounds like they're ready to go. So okay, right? So there's that
Right.
awkward feeling because now you're breaking connection, breaking rapport, making an assumption. So to me, your emotional connection as the salesperson, what I'm hearing you say, your emotional connection as the salesperson is essential in order to avoid that awkward moment, because your connection to their why is what gives you the confidence and the clarity to move forward.
Right.
Is that what
Yeah.
you're
So,
saying?
yes, exactly. Like in my convert method, the C
Yeah.
is connect. And so people, again, they can connect. The second one, the O is observe, right? So when you're connecting and asking those questions, one, I teach you how to ask better questions to go a little deeper. And that can get awkward for some people. Like I said, some people like, well, asking them why do they want to lose weight, isn't that kind of personal? Or what do they need the money for? No, because you want to understand, and the reason you're coming from a
Mhm.
place of understanding, you want to really understand. If I'm going to help you in your fitness journey or your company, or in your sales conversations, I need to know what's driving you.
Yeah.
And then that's where that observe comes in. You understand their behavior. How are they answering these questions? How deeply emotional is it for them?
Mm.
And so then you can so again, then you can just kind of build on, you get overcome those objections because now you're understanding, you're observing their behavior and what really drives them.
Yeah.
And then you get into the N and convert the N, which is needs. What are their needs? Now, okay, you said in sales, you want to make more money because, your kids are playing sports and they need that equipment. Okay, now I understand why you need it, why it's important to you,
Hmm.
and what would you need now in your sales conversations to be able to connect better and make more money right now. Well,
Right.
I guess I need to learn how to better have conversations. I need to learn how to manage my CRM. Okay, now I know exactly what more details, what they need. And then the invalidate and convert the validate. So if I understand what you were saying, Michèle, you wanted to make more money because your kids are playing hockey and they need equipment. And in order to make that kind of money, you need to get better at your sales
Hmm.
conversations in your CRM. Is that right? Am I hearing you right?
Hmm.
Yes, you are, Stephanie. Great. So now we're on the same page and it's not awkward because you're telling me we're just talking. Now I get what you want and what
Yeah.
you need and what's important to you. And so then the next step is, well, here's what I have that solves that problem. Now they're ready to listen because they truly feel that connection with you, that
Yeah.
emotional connection. You get me, you validated, you repeated back what I said. She gets me. This
Mm-hmm.
woman, she gets
Mm-hmm.
me. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I'm really passionate about teaching the convert framework, is because it gives you that process so you can every single time guide the customer through the conversation. So you
Mm-hmm.
don't have those awkward feelings, you don't get those objections. Um, and it's not awkward anymore to ask for it, because by the time you get to the R, which is receive the revenue, they're ready. They're ready with their credit card, or they're ready to sign the contract.
Right. Yeah. You referenced again process and systems, and you
Mhm.
talked about that earlier about the GPS. And I heard you make a direct connection between processes and systems, or structure, if you will,
Mhm.
and awkwardness. And we started with awkwardness at the very beginning, and I want to pull on that. Like, where did this sense of awkwardness come from? And Stefani, what's driving you to avoid awkwardness? It feels like there's something there.
Yeah. Where does, so I guess to clarify your question, the sense of awkwardness for like clients, people, like salespeople in
Yeah,
general,
I
is
get
that?
the, well, I get the sense that you don't want anyone to feel awkward, right?
Yeah.
And usually if we don't, usually there's something, where did that come from? Like what is your driver in terms of trying to help people not feel awkward when they're
Yeah.
commuting?
Yeah, good question. I think really just wanting people to be confident, is when people are, especially for business owners that I work with, and then, I know you work with them as well. They're so passionate about their business, and they started this company. Even for myself, I was in corporate for 25 years, and I'm passionate, yeah, about sales and helping people just feel confident, because I feel like you started this business for a reason. You created this product, this service, whatever it is, that passion behind it. And I guess you shouldn't feel awkward. I don't like to use the word should, but there's no reason to feel awkward. If you've got a product or a program, I always say you're
Mm,
doing them a disservice by not talking about it. And
mm,
so, yeah, I guess trying to understand why they feel awkward is there something, a belief shift, a mind shift, that they feel
mm,
that the product isn't good enough? And when I ask them, I'm like, well, do you think you have the best product on the market? Yeah, I do. Is it priced accurately? Absolutely. And
yeah.
so when I start to have those conversations and they can understand, and I know, I think you and I, when we had talked previously, my background, I grew up, my grandfather was an Italian immigrant, and we sold vegetables at the farmers market. And so at 6 years old,
Mm,
I was forced to learn how to sell, and I watched my grandfather talk to, complete strangers every week. And it was about it was just having conversations with people. People just want to know about how I grew the
mhm,
vegetables. And
mhm.
I talked about recipes that my mom would make with with the different vegetables. So I think, just, I guess I don't know if I'm really answering the
Yeah,
question, but
yeah.
like feeling awkward, I think it's just why, because I want people to take pride in what they have to offer. And if you truly believe, and if you don't, then maybe you're in the wrong business, and maybe that's not for you. But I
Mhm.
think avoiding the awkwardness comes from when they just truly know their worth and their value of the product or the program or the system that they offer. I'm confident that my sales program can help people because I've seen it work.
Right.
And it's so great when I see people, business owners, time and time and time again that I work with, all of a sudden the light
Click.
bulb goes off, the shift goes off, and they're like, I feel so much more comfortable. That's, they're not afraid anymore. They're confident. And I even had one client, her clients called me and said, what did you do to her? She's walking in here now, her presentation, she's confident, she's like,
It's amazing.
and
So,
they said, we want to know what you did. And I said,
what
well,
did you,
it's
yeah.
her. Yeah. But I just taught her the process. And when she started asking the better questions, that's where she felt more confident, and that awkwardness went away, because she knew what she was offering was valuable. She just didn't really have a process of way to kind of get it out and share it with people.
Beautiful. I'm going to come back to briefly your story about you said your grandfather, right? Selling vegetables.
Yes.
Yeah. What I heard as you were sharing that story was a couple things. One, I imagine he was very proud of his product,
Oh, yes.
which
Absolutely.
you witnessed as a 6-year-old. And he also, I'm hearing, was probably talking to people and sharing and building rapport with the community of people who are buying. So you saw these very rich connections happening as a very young person. Grandpa's proud of his product and he's talking to all these people and they buy it. Like, this is amazing, right?
Yeah.
So I would imagine that that experience had some impact on the frame that you have today and how you develop your sales training,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, okay, so this is really curious because you witnessed it and saw it, and it's like, wow, that's amazing. And then you see people later on in your life, I would imagine you probably saw people who were not proud and weren't able to build the same kind of rapport. And you're like, wait, I know how to do this. So I saw this happen at 6 years old, right? Um, Now, you brought in process a few times, and I'm curious about the relationship between process and confidence because you've related those. And I'd love for you to share a
Mhm.
little bit about what that connection is for you.
I think it's really just knowing where you're going next. When you have that structure or the process, that's where your conversations are going to feel more natural. So if I go back to, my GPS example, when I plug in my GPS, it asks me where I'm at, right? That's the first thing is,
Mhm.
you needed to understand where your client's at, or the GPS wants to know where I'm at.
Right.
And then it asks me, do you want to take back roads? Do you want to take the highway? Do you want to avoid this or that? But
Mm.
I know exactly where I'm going because it's going to tell me step by step by step by step. So I feel confident. So in your sales conversations, knowing if you have a process, the convert process, like, okay, the first thing I want to do is connect. Then I want to make sure that I'm observing their behavior. Then I want to make sure I'm understanding their needs. Then I want to make sure that I validate their needs, right? So
Hmm.
in your mind, when you understand the process, you just feel
Right.
so much more confident in leading your client. Because what I often see, Michelle, is happen is people will build that rapport, they start connecting, and then they might ask one question about their needs, and then they go right into executing the contract. So they skip over
Yeah.
observing customer's behavior. They don't validate their needs. They skip out, they might connect, might observe a little bit, they ask about the needs, and then they execute the contract, and then
Yeah.
they get ghosted. They don't receive the revenue, and then the T is touch follow, then they don't follow up. So I just truly believe if you want to feel confident and not feel so awkward, having it's just critical.
Yeah.
Anything, if you want an assembly line of a factory, in baking, so many things in order to be effective, you've got to follow a process or have a
Yeah.
structure to be effective. And
Yeah.
so, one other example, it's a little bit off, but I like it. If you watch football, and American football, what do? They huddle up and they talk about the play, and then they go out and they execute, and then they go back and they huddle up. So they're always knowing what's coming next. They've got to play. They have it play by
Hmm.
play, and they just do it over and over and over and over again. And
Agreed.
that's
Hmm.
where that success and confidence.
Hmm.
That's why I feel like it's so important because people they get lost in their conversations, and that's back to the awkwardness. They're having so much fun connecting, and now they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, what did you think about the price?"
Yeah.
And then they throw in bonuses and discounts, and it's like, well, I don't know. I'm not sure if this is what I need. Oh, crap, because they didn't ask what the client needed. They were all over the
Hmm.
board. When you
Hmm.
have a systematic way to ask the questions and guide the customer all along the way, you will feel confident and they will feel confident because they know exactly where you're taking them.
Yeah, exactly. You're really, disciplined repetition. And I see that as well. We see it everywhere. Whenever we follow a process, you've talked about confidence, and I think just one level before that, if you will, it really gives a sense of a comfort or safety at the very base level. It feels safe, it feels predictable, not only for you as the salesperson, if you will, or the provider, but also for the person on the receiving end, if they have a sense that you know where you're going, they have a sense that you're following a process, even if it's not outlined, they'll be
Right.
able to intuitively tell that, oh, you've got this. You know where you're
Hmm.
going. We're not just randomly talking about this, situation. And that in itself instills confidence in them too, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing. So
Yeah, when
this
people feel guided, that's where that trust comes in,
guided,
the know,
yeah.
like, and trust.
Hmm.
That's where you start to build that
Yeah.
trust is when you're asking their needs and when you're validating their needs, that's where it comes in, where the client says, okay, she gets me. She's asking me these questions. She understands. We're not even talking about price or product yet because I don't know if it's going to be a good fit for you until I've really uncovered what's important to you, why that's important,
Hmm.
and so forth. So yeah, and you're 100% right. The client picks up on that and understands that. And that's where they're going to start to trust you that you are the person that can
Yeah.
help them solve the problem, or your product or your program is what they've been looking for.
Hmm. Exactly. This is I love this. Your passion is just so lovely. I
Well,
can hear
sometimes
it.
I get a
It's
little
just
excited,
jumping out of the
animated.
screen here. So I actually want to go back to where did this passion come from? Like what has been fueling your drive? What's your why? Why do you do all of this? And want to help people become more confident in
Oh,
their sales process?
good question. I think probably just one, being as a woman and for years in corporate, I worked in, finance and retail banking. Um,
Mm.
so I think part of it, my uh, from a little girl when I worked with my grandpa, I was the only girl, right? It was all boys that worked on the farm. It was
Uh,
my two brothers. There was other guys, all the other um, people at the market, but I didn't have a choice. It was my grandpa, and I think. I wasn't as strong as the boys, but they had to do more of the lifting. I was able to go in and take a little nap once in a while, or I got the donuts and they didn't. But I guess maybe it's kind of off, but I think what was like as a little girl, right, is I had to outsell everybody else. And I could do it, right? Even though I didn't have the loudest voice or I wasn't the strongest person. And then growing up, my mom owned a beauty salon. And at 21, she was an entrepreneur. She was an Italian
mm,
immigrant herself at 8 years old.
mm,
And, but, she created this amazing salon and came in and transformed people. They didn't come in and just got a haircut. I mean, they got a
mm,
haircut, color, and makeup and all that kind of stuff. And then going into corporate America, knowing that I had something to offer. And so I think just from my own passion, just always wanting to, I don't know if fit in is the right word, but knowing that I had a seat at the table, if you will.
mm.
And so, and then I did it, and I got knocked down, fell off the chair a
Yeah,
couple of times, and you get back up again. And
as
so
you
I think
do.
I just want, yeah, that, and I just want other people to know that, that they can do it, that it's,
So, yeah, I love that. I heard that. You said, I have a voice, I have something to offer. And you also said as a youngster, you learned that you had to outsell the boys or you had to outwork, if you will, the boys. And then you said you're with your mom, she transformed people. So you were actually witness to transformation as well. How did you know as a young girl in that environment that you had something to offer? What gave you access to that confidence? Do you know?
a question. I don't know, maybe it was just maybe my own internal tenacity. Um, or just I think my dad had always told me at a young age, Stephanie, you somehow you always come out smelling like a rose, no matter what you fall into. I won't say the naughty word, but um,
Oh, yeah.
so but so maybe just from my family, and watching them again. My grandfather's an Italian, like just bringing what his skills and starting from scratch and
Yeah.
building this farm. And my mom, just going to beauty school. She didn't have a lot of business acumen. She didn't know anybody else that had started a business. She did it. And she just because she had a passion to serve women and people and make them feel beautiful. My grandfather, to give people healthy produce. So I guess if, as I'm talking and thinking about it, maybe just, um, you know, just growing up kind of in a family of service,
Hmm.
maybe just really made me think that, I just enjoyed serving people. I enjoyed watching my mom transform and serve people, my grandfather, and just being an extrovert, connecting with people is always fun, talking to people and learning about people's experiences. And I think we all have gifts, so
Hmm.
I think and maybe this is a little off, but off topic, but there's a while too where, I've always been extroverted. I've always, had fun selling and connecting people
Mm.
and influencing people. And, sometimes when I was in corporate, it was like, okay, tone it down. You're a little too much. And,
Mm.
and there was a time where I felt that maybe I didn't really own my voice and wasn't
Mm.
as strong in my sales and my outwardness because I felt like I had to fit in. But the older I got and I realized that actually it's a gift and not everybody, for me, connecting with people and sharing my passion comes easy for me. But I
Right.
realize that it doesn't for
Mm.
everybody else. And so
Mm.
just really just decided that, this is one of my gifts.
Yeah.
We all have our separate gifts, but being able to get people excited, feel confident, find that passion, what, drives them inside is my gift. And so I think just being able to use the gift that I was given a voice, this extroverted personality, I'm not shy, I'm not afraid to fail and just get back up and go
Hmm.
back out there. And I did from a young age. That's what my dad always told me. I don't know how you do it, but
Yeah. You just
so
did.
uh,
Interesting. At a young age, it was reinforced that you had value and that you could do anything, get up and you
mhm,
always smell, you always smell like roses. And you could do it. And then, the thing that is striking to me is you've talked about really supporting people and you haven't said these words, but they light up when you help them step into that confidence and see their experience their gifts and see their worth or really
right,
appreciate their worth. And what I'm imagining is you as a young girl with you seeing your grandfather lighting people up with his produce and seeing your mom light people up by transforming them. And they were both in those examples, they were both in service of others and happiness. They were happy and their patrons were happy. So
right.
I'm imagining a joyful energy around that as a young person would have been highly influential for you. You're like, wait, if you help people and do cool things for people and do good stuff, people are happy and you're happy too. I would imagine as a young person that
And
would
as you're saying it out loud, I mean, and ultimately, you're making money, right? My grandfather was doing what he loved and giving
exactly.
people healthy food and talking about recipes and
Yeah,
ultimately, yeah, getting paid for it. So, yeah, you
right.
can actually make
Exactly.
good money by being of
Thriving,
service.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, these are all, influential, very influential at a young age. Now, jumping forward a bit, you talk in corporate, and I think this is a curious piece that I want to dig into for a bit. You said you didn't always own your voice and you were told that you might be too much, need to temper it down and sort of so this exuberant, joyful, passionate energy that you have was a bit bottled up for a bit.
Mhm.
What happened during that time that allowed you to recognize that you weren't owning your voice anymore and help you come out the other side to be where you are today? Curious about that journey for you.
Yeah, I don't, I would probably say just kind of a series of ups and downs. But I've always, been the blunt. Like I went to private schools and we had to wear uniforms, and I always had to have like extra jewelry. I always had a little extra to my uniforms, to stand out and to be different. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think it was just when times when I wasn't being who I was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I wasn't as successful, and the teams that I was leading were not as successful.
Okay, I just want to capture that. When I wasn't myself, I wasn't as successful. Is that what you said?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I just really, just off the top of my head, when I'm thinking back to these moments
Mm,
when I was told, this is how you have to dress. You're working in a financial institution. You're dressing a little too fancy. The way you're talking to clients or the way I was training my team. But what I was doing at it back then was what I'm teaching now is having a conversation with people. back to when I worked in financial services, I was a retail bank manager. And my tellers, somebody would come in and they had like large sums of money in their checking account. And they're like, well, I don't know. I can't talk to them about money. I mean, I'm just a bank teller and, they've got all this money. I'm like, well, if they have $100,000 sitting in a totally free checking account, I don't know how wise they are about their money, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, you're not the financial advisor or the investment banker, but you can get them to that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So be confident because you do have
Mm-hmm.
what your job is valid, being that bank teller and advising that customer on what the next step is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just as you ask the question, it's you're so good with these deep questions, Michelle. I love it. So you're getting me really to think back and flash
Nice.
back. But when I think about I guess I don't know if not called buck the system, but push the envelopes a little bit in corporate and just decided I'm just going to be me because I don't know how else to
Mm-hmm.
be, and I'm going to teach these
Mm-hmm.
people a way. We were super effective, and I led so many teams to success. We won trips and we won events, and I just I would be in one bank and I'd build that team up. I'd recruit and I'd hire and I'd train the people, and we
Mm-hmm.
get to a certain level, and then they'd bring me to the next one that was down in the dumps.
Yeah.
And it was, and sometimes it was discouraging. I'm like, come on, I just want to ride this wave a little bit. But then I realized again, kind of going back that that's what my gift was. And
Right.
when I lean into what my gift is and stop, just people resonated with it, even though it's,
Yeah.
I know you worked in financial service, it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of more that stuffy environment, if you
Yeah.
will. But I just had to embrace who I was.
Right.
And that's when I had the success, is when I
Right.
just decided to be who I was created to be, who I am,
Well,
and not try to be somebody else.
it's so you're just hitting on something that's so profoundly true when we started with talking about being awkward at the very beginning of the conversation, and we've kind of touched on it a few times. And when we're not being ourselves, when we're tempering it down or sort of bottling that bit up because it's not appropriate or what have you, we are also subtly awkward,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That's what happens. And this is what I see in differentiation too. Differentiation, this is what it's
Mhm.
all about. It's be yourself. If you have the courage, like you have discovered, to be yourself and fully
Mhm.
expressing it's fully expressing who you are and really leaning into your gifts and bringing them to life fully. When we do that, it doesn't feel awkward anymore.
Right.
And
Yeah.
people
I love
can
that.
tell, right? People can
Mhm.
tell when you're holding back. They can tell when you're being a bit tentative, when you're more calculated, right? They can tell whether it's subtle or whether it's overt, they can still tell. And inside, I don't know that we necessarily have a strong awareness of what's going on for us, but there's an energy that's awkward when we're holding back, right? We can't
Yeah.
help it.
I love that you made that call up because it's so true. And I'm sure, like you said, you see that in your work
Hmm.
is, yeah, and maybe that's people, leaders, whether it's even in sales, just leaders, if they're not truly being authentic to who they are,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe they are an awkward leader because they're not being able to,
Yeah.
they're trying to be somebody else that they read some book or watched some
Yep.
podcast or somebody else told them how they have to be effective.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work.
Exactly. It's, to your point, there's process and structure is
Mhm.
brilliant for guiding results, but we don't want structure with ourselves in terms of putting a mask on and following someone else's formula,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Someone
Exactly.
else's formula is theirs, and it's like wearing something that doesn't really fit quite right, right? It's
Hmm.
it's never
Yeah.
going to feel quite right because it's not our own. I would imagine, in my business, I see a lot of this. Like there's resistance around because it takes courage. It takes courage to
Hmm.
step out and own who you are and really bring that to life, regardless of what it looks like. It takes courage because, of course, we're practiced at belonging. We're
Hmm.
practiced at staying under the radar because that's safe. I imagine you see that a lot. I see that in my business. How do you help clients come out of that and have the courage to take that step and really bring their gifts to life?
Yeah, I think I would say it just goes back to understanding the why. It just, as you asked me, right? What fuels my fire? Where do I get my energy from? I think again, why did you start the business? And going back to this example, with this fitness team that I coached yesterday, we had just an amazing breakthrough session because they were struggling a little bit in calling people who had clicked on an ad for fitness, right? And feeling awkward asking them all the questions. So I just took it back and I said, well, how did all of you? I mean, you didn't come out of the womb, a fitness instructor. Something changed over in you. What was it? And each one of them shared, and the light bulbs were going off and they were having epiphanies because they said, well, somebody called me and somebody asked me about my goals and why I wanted to work out. And I'm like, like
somebody invited you to try
yes. And
something.
one girl got super emotional because she said the lady kept calling me and pushing me. And she said, my dad had just died and I was not in a good emotional state. And she was 100 pounds overweight. And the lady was persistent, said, just come in and try a free class. She came in and tried it. And that's what they do. I'm like, did y'all just hear that? Like that phone call, Heidi, transformed your life. And she was persistent with that phone call. And that because she was persistent, she transformed your life. How many other Heidis are out there? How many other people from you picking up the phone, somebody pushed that button or clicked on that ad for fitness for a reason? They didn't just, I'm just bored. Let's just click on all these things because I want all these people to call me. I have nobody to talk to. Something inside of them said, I want something about fitness. You could be the person that changes their life. And they were like, all of a sudden, all this training we've been doing, it was like, I'm not calling to sell them a membership. I'm calling because maybe they're in a bad emotional state or they got a diagnosis and I'm ready to transform. That's why I do this job, because I want to transform people's lives in fitness. And so I forget what your question was, but it just like, that's what the passion is. I think if you ask, why did you start this company? Why did you go work for this? Why did you take this sales job? Now, some people might say I was just desperate. I needed a job. Okay, then you're maybe not in the right field. But, and I could even ask you, I think we've talked about, like, what is your passion? Like when people start talking and they start sharing about what it is that they love about being a fitness instructor, about owning a moving company, working at a nonprofit. These are all the clients I deal with. Their passion just oozes out of them. And I'm like, that's what you need to share with your clients. That's what selling is. Having a conversation about what you do and sharing your passion, it is everything. So I think I forget what the question was.
No, we were just picking up on the why there. You brought that forward. What you're talking about in terms of passion, I think this is a really interesting piece because the persistence is transformative, right? It's transformative for anybody who has a disciplined persistence. That persistence is like compound interest. No matter what you do, if you keep doing that persistent activity, it will result in compound results.
Yes, that.
So this, it doesn't matter really what it is. And in this example, when you're talking about the idea of the why and what it is, this is a very interesting piece, I think, where so many people say, well, I don't really know what my passion is. I don't really have a passion. So it's easy for those of us who are passionate to say, just, follow your passion. And at the same time, that's kind of true, but it's kind of not. And so when you have someone who is lacking that clarity around something that is meaningful to them, different language, not maybe passionate, but something that's meaningful to them, how do you help them through that so that they can connect their why to the services that they provide?
Yeah. Great question. I think about that often because, even that comes up with my clients, right? They're talking to people and they don't know why. But I think it just comes from, again, just asking better questions and just really breaking it down to something simple. Like, if I even go back to, the fitness example, if people said they didn't have goals, or why do they want to lose weight? I mean, but why? I mean, you just, and it doesn't have to be this big thing, or people have to have these people think they have to have these big, enormous goals or this big, amazing passion. Maybe it's just something simple as, like even in sales, right? I just want to be good at my job. I want to be on the leaderboard for once in a year. I
Yeah.
don't want to be the last on the leaderboard anymore. If I could just move up to number 11 out of 12, I'd be good. Okay,
Mm.
great.
Well,
You know, so, so
that's the beginning of the journey,
right.
right? And if, yeah, that's a beautiful place because not everybody is ready for the big flying leap of that giant goal and saying, well, I want to be number one.
Yeah.
Not everybody's ready to even accept that that's a possibility for them, let alone whether they're willing to do the work,
Mhm.
right? That's a whole
Yes.
different journey. But for people who are more incremental and they're at a place where they're having trouble either believing it's possible or making a change for whatever reason, there's a bit of resistance there. That small step can really be the transformative step, and that's really all it takes is just that first
Right.
initial, just get me to number 11 instead of number 12 on the leaderboard, right?
Yeah. And I've
Yeah.
seen that, with so many of my clients. Like I said, one of my
Yeah.
clients that, has owned her company for 15 years. And she said, I hate sales and I keep losing
Oh,
out because of price. She thought she was
yeah.
going to have to
Mm,
slash all her prices. And when she just made a few tweaks in her
yeah,
conversation, everything, her confidence shot through the roof.
exactly.
And then, yeah, and then, like you said, we're able to make a little bit more changes. But,
Yeah.
she didn't, all she wanted to do, same thing, was just capture more business. And what do you mean by capture more business? She didn't have this really big goal. And she
Hmm.
just didn't, her goal was, I just don't want to lower my prices.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start there. How do we figure out that you have a conversation where you can overcome a price objection? And when I started talking to her about just changing up her asking better questions and understanding,
Hmm.
which she just needed to tweak a few things. All of a sudden she was like, oh, we got on our next call and she had 5 client meetings that week. I said, how many client meetings of those 5 did price come up?
There you
And
go.
she started laughing because I knew what the answer. Do you know how many? 0.
Yeah. Yeah.
5 clients. And she thought she was going to have to lower her price. But because I
There's
talked about like changing
totally.
up the
Yep.
conversation, having a process, as you say, having a flow to your conversation that
Yeah.
makes sense and understanding what's important to them. Because she just thought, okay, well, if you're going to move, this is what you need to do.
Hmm.
This, she just
Hmm.
had it all figured out. But
Well,
that wasn't always what
as
was.
you've brought up something, and we haven't got a ton of time to dig into it, but I just want to highlight it because the idea that price is an objection is a falsehood. We might what does Warren Buffett say? He said, "Price is what you get, or price is what you pay. Value is what you get." And there's another quote, and I can't think of who it's attributed to right now, but it says, in the absence of value, it always comes down to price. And those are two quotes that I lean on very heavily because in my work, for sure,
So good.
if price is in the conversation, there's a problem with the value proposition.
100%.
Mhm.
100%.
Every
And that's
time.
where, yeah, when you take them through the process, you understand what's
Yeah.
valuable or what's
Hmm.
important to them,
Hmm.
and you address that up front. That's what
Very
we
good.
talk about in guiding them. What is important to you, like, in your sales process? What is it
Yeah.
that you need? Okay, I just want to move up to number 11.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
let's talk about what it's going to take to get you there. And you know,
Exactly.
and if paying me, if it just gets you to one more sale, would you be happy? Yes. Okay. So let's go.
Let's go.
Okay, I'm ready. They already know how much I
Oh,
charge.
that's
They're just like,
amazing.
I want to move up to number 11, and I'm talking to them and understanding that that's important to you. And are you, what are some things we could talk about to get you there? Yeah, I could do that. Okay, great. All right, well, let's get started. Okay, where do I sign up?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you're right, the value and then the trust. I built up the trust because I
Hmm.
understood what was important to them.
Right.
So,
And we started this with how do you help people get over the fear to have the courage to make that change? And to your point, the why, if people understand why they're doing what they're doing, fear tends to dissipate if the why is important enough. If it's just a good idea, it doesn't tend to work well, right? Fear is still very
yeah,
present for just a good idea. But if it's something that is really, if you're connecting to the true meaning of what's genuinely important to you, then the fear tends to get quiet because it's overridden. by something that's more important.
Yeah, I was just I was listening to a podcast this morning, but
Mm.
yeah, and you touched on it. And what sales is, it's outcomes,
Yeah,
right?
that's
What
right.
is the outcome that we want?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what your customers want
Mm-hmm.
is people, if they sell all the features, I've got this and I have that. What's the outcome? What's in it for
Yeah.
me? How is this
Mm-hmm.
going to benefit me?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when you can get to that with to people to understand this little thing is going to get you this outcome or this
Mm-hmm.
result,
Mm-hmm.
that's when all of a sudden the light bulbs go off. And that's really what you're talking about in sales. If I could just show you one or two ways in your conversation or in your to tweak your process to get you to number
Yeah.
11 or 10 on the leaderboard,
Mm-hmm.
would you want to start working together? Yeah, I do. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
want. That's the outcome
Mm-hmm.
that I want. Okay, great. Let's go.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's beautiful. Oh, so much juicy stuff here. I think we could go on for quite some time now. However,
Right.
not today. So as you're reflecting today, Stephanie, on our conversation during this time together, I would just like to give you a moment to capture what would you like to summarize or highlight from today's conversation that you'd like your listeners, our followers to hear.
Great. Well, I think, thank you for asking such, great, insightful questions. And I think if I would just, for people just to really know that, that sales is just a conversation and having confidence, being confident in who you are and what you do.
Mm,
And, um, I think, yeah, I think it would just be really just understanding your why. Why are you doing something? What drives you? And
mm,
it doesn't have to be this big thing. Even just, the simplest of
mhm.
things can drive you and can make a difference and give you that confidence. You're going to have success, right? And it's all
Beautiful.
about, it's not what other people, like we talked about in corporate, how somebody else thinks you should be or how you should be. I think when you're just true to yourself and you follow that passion and just believe that what you have to offer, somebody needs that, right?
Yeah.
What is one of the quotes in real estate mortgages? Someone somewhere is looking for what I have to offer, and it's my
Yep.
job to find them.
Yep.
So we all have that gift, and we just got to go out and find them. But there's somebody there that wants to hear your story,
Hmm.
buy your product, use your service, whatever, and just have the confidence to go out and get it.
Beautiful. Somewhere. What was the quote again? Somewhere, some.
Someone
So,
somewhere is looking for my service,
there you
and
go.
it's my job to find them.
There you go. Beautiful. Well, let's go with that. And how do people find you when they're looking for you and wanting your service, Stephanie? Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, great. So I'm on all the social media platforms, Stefani Havel. Otherwise, my company is the Sales Strategy Network. So if you go to salesstrategynetwork.com, I've got a lot of resources and things like that. Or you can also better call Stephanie is my calendar. So I always encourage, I love having conversations with people. And
Ah,
people think they've got a good sales process and maybe it just needs a tweak, or maybe they don't have one at all and they think one would be beneficial to them. I do what I call like a sales mapping call. So we'll just,
nice.
I like a conversation. Tell me where you're at in your sales process. Talk
There
to
you
me,
go.
about it. And so that's at bettercallstephanie.com, and you can connect with me and do a consultation on your sales process.
Perfect. Thank you. That's wonderful. So we know how to get a hold of you and just want to thank you and appreciate you for the enthusiasm and the confidence and clarity you brought to this conversation. Thanks for today.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate it. And I appreciate your great questions today.
Fantastic. Appreciate having you. Thank you, Stephanie. Bye for now.